Hello ring bearers and welcome to the channel. Before we get into it, I just want to apologize in advance for the audio, because I'm not able to use my laptop right now because it got the blue screen of death. So that really sucks, so I don't have access to my Blue Yeti microphone, so I'm recording this with my Galaxy AirPods 2. So yeah, I apologize in advance. Now, let's not beat around the bush any longer and just get right into it. I have just finished watching The Rings of Power Episode 1. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be a massive fan of the Lord of the Rings lore because I've actually never read the books. I am, however, listening to the Lord of the Rings audiobook narrated by Andy Serkis at the moment. I'm on chapter 2 of The Fellowship of the Ring, so I'm on my way to be considered a true The Lord of the Rings fan, not just a plebeian who has only watched the movies. It has to be said that the Lord of the Rings movies are some of my favorite movies ever, and in my opinion, it is the best movie trilogy of all time. Let's talk a little bit about the creation of the Rings of Power series first. In a deal that can only be described as insane, Amazon bought the rights to the Lord of the Rings for $250 million from Middle-earth Enterprises, which owned the rights to The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Now, $250 million might not sound like much, but it is the biggest TV rights deal for a literary property in history. Now, let me just put it in perspective for you, as per Forbes. Back in 1996, when Tolkien first sold the movie rights and merchandising rights, it was only sold for $250K. That is exactly 1,000 times less than the Amazon deal. Ian Fleming's James Bond series, excluding Casino Royale and any future novels in the series, were only sold for $50,000. Warner Brothers only paid $2 million for the rights of the first 4 Harry Potter books by J.K. Rowling. $250 million was only for the TV rights and doesn't take into account the budget for the series, which, if it is anything like Game of Thrones, is gonna cost upwards of $100 million for each season. Let me just say that the Lord of the Rings movies never cost more than $94 million, which is insane when you consider some movies today have a budget of $150 million to $200 million plus, and the Lord of the Rings still looks fantastic even by today's standards. And let's talk a little bit about the development of the Rings of Power series. The Rings of Power series has 3 different directors with 2 men and 1 woman. Wayne Yip directs 4 episodes, and J.A. Bayona and Charlotte Brandstrom have 2 episodes each for a total of 8 episodes in the first season. Writing credit include the likes of J.R.R. Tolkien, obviously, as the series is based off of his work, though I think most of the material will be original due to the lack of original source material, as the series takes place during the Second Age. But anyway, Jason Cahill, Justin Doble, Jennifer Hutchinson, Patrick McKay and John D. Payne are also in the writing credits. The series stars Murphy Clark, a Swedish-Welsh actress, as Galadriel. She was actually in HBO Max's Historic Materials as Sister Clara, a really tragic character. I watched that show and I can honestly tell you that I did not recognize her as Galadriel. Other actors and actresses include Robert Aramayo as Elrond, Markella Kavanagh as Eleanor Brandyfoot, and Benjamin Walker as Gil-galad. Now, there are many other actors obviously, but I'm not sure which character are actually important. There are actually someone called Orin Theo Sadek Burrows, Bronwyn, and Arondir. They might be important, or they might not be important. Now, the setting of the Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, is set during the Second Age. Now, I'm just going to read directly from the Tolkien Gateway, because otherwise I would just be spewing a lot of nonsense. Beginning in about the 584th year since the return of Noldor to Middle-earth, the Second Age is the longest of the chronicled ages. It began after the destruction of Elrond in the War of Wrath, the founding of Lindon, and the creation of Numenor. The 2 major Elvish and Mannish kingdoms of the age took place soon afterwards. If you understood any of that, then lucky you, because I certainly don't. I guess I have a lot of catching up to do. Now, with all that exhibition out of the way, let's actually talk about the episode. So, the series starts off with young Galadriel, and when I mean young, I actually mean child Galadriel, played by the amazing 13-year-old Lady Amelie Natasha Sophia Child Villa, daughter of William Child Villa, the 10th Earl of Jersey. Can you believe that once upon a time Galadriel actually got bullied? Me neither. It proves that even good-looking creatures in this case can be bullied, and it isn't exclusive to humans. Now, Child Galadriel doesn't appear for too long, as it soon skips to Morgoth, who is about to wage war on Middle-earth. So the elves go to war. The elves were directly affected as well, because they have this giant tree in Valinor that lights up, and Morgoth made that light fade out, so they have an actual incentive to go to war, because they may not have traveled all the way to Middle-earth otherwise. Now the elves ultimately defeat Morgoth, but one of his most devoted followers steps up in his place, and it is of course the Dark Lord himself, he who must not be named. Oh wait, that's Harry Potter. I meant to say Sauron. Now Galadriel was too young to fight in the war against Morgoth, but her brother Finrod wasn't. After defeating Morgoth, the Dark Lord wasn't too happy with it, and he endgamed Finrod. And this is where the story kicks off. At this point, the Rings of Power is ultimately a revenge story, as Galadriel is hellbent on seeking out Sauron, to the dismay of others. She is so hellbent on revenge that she actually refuses to go to the Undying Lands of Valinor with the other elves in her unit that she is the commander of, and jumps out in the Sundering Seas just moments before entering Valinor. Yeah, they called her the commander of the Northern Armies. Like most stories, Galadriel is almost obsessed in finding Sauron, even if most people believe he is gone. It is kinda like Harry Potter when Voldemort returned. No one wanted to believe Harry when he said that he was back, not until Order of the Phoenix when Voldy broke into the Ministry of Magic. She is obviously right, because Sauron is just laying low until he can gather enough strength to rebuild the armies. But then we have the other side of the story, where her squadron are tired of seeking out Sauron because they have been going at it for years and years and found pretty much nothing other than some marks of Sauron. But ultimately the squad pretty much just quit, and it kind of makes sense. I mentioned that no orcs have been sighted in winters, so it seems to most that it's a futile task. I think the first sign of trouble actually shows itself in a village called Horden. It has been burnt down to the ground. There was actually this cow that had ventured all the way to Horden, and this healer woman, or just healer, has to make the cow better, but some disgusting black goo comes out of the cow's udders, and they instantly know that something is wrong here, and they go to this village. It's actually a human woman and a male elf, and it is hinted at that they have some sort of relationship or feelings for each other. Now it is also mentioned that love between humans and elves is forbidden or something, and mating between the two races has never been attempted before. I can't actually remember exactly what they said, but they said something in that fashion. Now, probably the most interesting part of the episode, and it is literally the last scene of the episode. A man gets shot out of the sky like a comet and lands in Middle-earth. Now, I don't know for sure, but I'm fairly sure this is one of the wizards sent to Middle-earth. Are they called Valors or something? Valars? I could be completely wrong, but this definitely looks like Gandalf or Saruman, or something like that. Now, if you know who was sent to Middle-earth first, then please let me know in the comments down below. Just while we're at it, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to leave a like and maybe subscribe while you're at it. Celebrimbor also makes a brief appearance, and if you don't know who he is the most skilled of elvensmiths, and he will eventually be manipulated into forging the 3 elven rings of power. Under the guidance of Sauron, the rings were forged, but unbeknownst to them and him, the craft taught by Sauron incorporated a binding magic into the rings. And we all know that later on Sauron forged the One Ring to rule them all. So the elves knew of Sauron's betrayal when he put on the ring. They were not affected and defied him, though the 3 elven rings were still subject to the One Ring. Now I honestly can't wait to see the rings being forged and how the dwarves became so greedy and retreated into the mountains, and their downfall and why they're hated by the elves, and how the men known to us as ringwraiths became so easily corrupted, as well as how Sauron tricked creatures into forging the rings, and Lord Elrond's rise to power, as well as the wizards and Galadriel. Now let's talk a little bit how the series has been received and how it looks. Now 25 million people actually tuned into the very first episode, which is crazy amount of people, and I couldn't be happier. I want the series to be a success because we need more Lord of the Rings, because it is perhaps the most interesting universe. Lore-wise, maybe only rivaled by Star Wars, because the lore in Star Wars is also massive. But I always preferred fantasy over sci-fi personally, but that doesn't mean that I dislike the other. But more Lord of the Rings is always a good thing, but we need to have quality over quantity. Now, a lot of people have been clowning on the show on Twitter, and yes, I know Twitter means nothing, but still, it had a lot of interactions. Now, there was a video of the Rings of Power for a magazine, for the magazine Entertainment Weekly, digital website, to show off some of the characters, and people were passing it off as being the intro to the Lord of the Rings series, when it was clearly not. Didn't even have a series title card. I just can't believe some people were stupid enough to believe it. But people did, and they were really hating on it, which I find pretty funny. It just proves that the average Twitter user has a very low IQ, and they cannot think for themselves. I believe they call it sheep. Yeah, sheeps. That's what they call it. Now, you were obviously not one of those people. The series also looks gorgeous, I think. I mean, it has to be one of the most expensive TV series of all time, so anything less than amazing is not gonna cut it. So yeah, really cinematic in my opinion. And one thing that is boiling my blood is that people were criticizing Galadriel for being able to single-handedly taking down a snow troll and pretty much calling her a mere Sue. And it's like, we always knew Galadriel was powerful. She's been described as the most powerful elf in Middle-earth or something like that. And I don't want to get overly feministic or anything like that, but if that was Legolas, no one would bat an eye, and they would be rejoicing, because how easily people forget that Legolas single-handedly took down an Oliphant, and you're telling me that you are cutting the line at Galadriel taking down a snow troll by herself? Now, I really hate this word, but I think it's toxic masculinity, or that fragile male ego that the loud minority of men have. If you pay attention, Galadriel is the only female on the squad as well, as a leader, and it's like some men can't handle a woman outshining or being more skilled than a man. When I was watching, I just thought it was really cool, a really cool action set piece, and it showed how skilled Galadriel is as a warrior. She didn't become the commander for being less skilled than the others. Come on now. Can we just let women be badass without resorting to sexism or Mary suing? And let's not forget that this is a fictional universe with dwarves, hobbits, orcs, wizards, goblins, magical rings, and elves that can jump 10 feet into the air and leave no footprint in the snow. And it's like, it seems like people have, or men have, different standards when it comes to women in like media, because they get judged differently. I mean, there's what do. If you put Legolas, or if you replace Galadriel with Legolas, no one would care. They wouldn't be saying oh my god, he is outshining all the other elves. It's like, when it comes to Galadriel, it's like, oh my god, she's a woman, she's outshining her squad full of men. That can't happen. And I'll show you this crazy, or not crazy, but this tweet on Twitter that someone tweeted out, and I fully agree with the tweet. And it's like, I think everyone pretty much liked Galadriel in the Lord of the Rings trilogy movies, and it's like, as soon as they show her doing something really badass and cool, they're like, nah, we don't want that. Like, she's been described as a really powerful elf, but I just don't understand it. Like, you get described as the most powerful, like, elf ever, then you would think that they would respect her being a really powerful warrior, but they just can't accept that. Now, I'm fairly sure that they also had a problem with, was it Eowyn? You know, the character, the female character that I believe she beheads this. I can't remember exactly what it's called. This dragon-like creature and kills that the witch king of Angmar, I believe it's called. And she kills him obviously with the help of either Merry or Pippin. But she kills him, and I believe people had issues with that as well. And it's like, who actually gives a shit? And actually a pretty cool scene is like, no man can kill me, and it's like, I am no man, as she kills him. I think it's just a really cool scene, but people have issues with women apparently, and it's like in video games as well. Is that like, I don't know, I can't say the majority of people, but a really loud minority of men dislike women in their video games, and it's like, that's why you often see white men on covers of video games and playable characters, because that is what sells, because majority of consumers are white men, and there's something different. You are taking a risk because you may not be appealing to the majority, but we are getting more badass female characters this year, and it can only be a good thing. We need more diversity, and people also hate diversity and have been criticizing diversity on the Rings of Power show, and it's like, oh my god, bro, just shut up, please. But yeah, that has been my thoughts on Lord of the Rings of Power series on Amazon. I'm really looking forward to episode 2. It is actually out now. It came out one day after episode 1, and I'm not sure if they're releasing an episode a day. I think that would be absolutely crucifying the show, because they spent so much money on it that don't want to give people everything in like a week. You want to space it out over a few weeks, so you can maximize subscribers and keep them subscribed for as long as possible. Because right now I'm using my free trial on Amazon Prime, and it's like, can pretty much get the entire season for free if they give us an episode a day. But yeah, obviously you can just subscribe, use the free trial when all the episodes are out, and get it for free. But I think we should really support this series, and yeah, I cannot wait for more Lord of the Rings of Power. Goodbye.